So performance anxiety, that is, oh man, I feel like it's the elephant in the room of a lot of college locker rooms. No one's really talking too much about it. I think the conversation is becoming bigger, but I think it really affects performance. Did you guys deal with performance anxiety at all during your time in college?
Yes. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I play basketball in a, like, not very basketball hotbed part of Georgia. I am, like, south of Atlanta, so it's kind of like more soccer, lacrosse, like that type of area. So whenever I was, like, good at basketball, it was, like, a big deal. And that's where my identity in basketball just kind of began. And it just carried on, like, so far. So it's like, if I kind of mentioned it before, if I wasn't playing well, I didn't feel like myself, like, at all. I didn't feel like Cassidy, because I associated Cassidy with, you know, balling out and, like, playing well and, you know, being an elite basketball player. So I always struggled with performance anxiety, and, like, if I didn't play well, even in practice, like, I had anxiety about practice. If I don't do well, then that's going to determine my minutes. That's going to determine, like, you know, looking over my shoulder at this girl. And so, yes, I 100% struggled with it. And, like, the expectations I put on myself, the expectations, like, I had maybe, like, from back home, like, that image of, like, being a good basketball player, like, that was hard to deal with. But I was hard on myself. I knew that if I didn't play well, that I wouldn't play. And that was something that I faced every single day for every practice, for every game for 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, every single day.
Yeah.
So, it was...
Did someone, like, was it noticeable to other people?
Like, whenever I reached a breaking point, like, if I, you know, got ripped during practice, and then I would, like, cry, of course that was noticeable.
You were like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Oh, don't ask if I'm okay.
crying.
Yeah, don't ask if I'm okay, because that's, like, what triggers tears.
Yeah.
Looking at the lights, like, that doesn't help. But, every single tactic tried it, doesn't work. But I internalized it, and I would, you know, talk to my parents about it and stuff like that. But I would internalize it so people, like, didn't really notice, but it would be evident if I hit a breaking point and I, like, cried and it all, like, came to a head and I just was so overwhelmed. But also you could see it in my play too, like, just terrified of making a mistake, terrified of, like, you know, is my coach gonna yank me? Like, always keeping your eye on the subs. Like, if the subs are coming in, like, are they coming in for me? Like, it's an all-encompassing thing.
Yeah.
Like, your head is just filled with those types of things, and it's hard to get out of that, like, by yourself.
I think it's, like, I mean, you're talking about, like, it showing up in your play, and I think everyone knows a kid that's playing scared. Like, playing scared of, like, being taken out or just doing the wrong thing. Like, you look terrible on the court, or in, like, whatever field of play that you do. Like, maybe you don't play basketball, but I know that was something that really messed me up. Like, I had major anxiety issues that I didn't know about until, like, I found out about that, like, as an adult later on, like, years after basketball. I think I had it in high school, and I just was always like, well, why am I so tense? Like, I don't know. Like, that's just like what I knew myself to be, and I think it was what helped me perform really well. Like, but it's the minute I finished basketball, it was kind of like, okay, like, this is something that you can't take into the rest of your life. And it shouldn't have even been there in the first place, but I just didn't know how to handle it. So for me, I think my anxiety kind of stemmed from just, I had really hard expectations on myself, like, just really high expectations. I was really highly recruited. I was a good academic, and there was just so much that I knew that I could be doing. And I also don't like people to see me struggling. Like, I'm like, no, I got it. I'm still good. Like, I'm someone who doesn't really ask for help. And so to be in a position where I need to ask for help, where things aren't familiar, where, like, just things are different, and just wanting to perform at such a high level, I was breaking down. And so I found myself in the sports psychologist's office, which was great. I think everyone should tap into resources like that when they get a chance to do so. But I also had a lot of confidence issues. And I think that that's something that, as you enter into a new level, your confidence can fluctuate, and that may lead to anxiety.
I think it's different, like, player to player, for sure. Because, like, for me, I was, like, I always had to fight really hard for, like, my playing time. I've always kind of been, like, an underdog.
Yeah.
So I had to be at my best at all times if I wanted the time, if I wanted to play.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I wasn't, like, a highly recruited type of player that, you know, had big schools on the table and stuff like that. So I always had to just fight tooth and nail for what I got.
Mm-hmm.
So I just felt like if I performed any less than my best, then I wouldn't get that time. And I'm just so envious of the girls that, like, in AAU that just leak and just give off, like, all of this confidence. And they just, like, you know, they can just drive to the hole and they can shoot from wherever and they just don't have that hesitation at all. I've seen those types of players, like, from AAU, high school, like, college, and I'm just like, I envy you. Like, that's something that I, you know, it took until my senior year to get that. And some people just have that factor to them.
It seems like there's two extremes now. Like when I see like highlight tapes and stuff and like see AAU games, it's like the kid who's like super swagged out, who like is ready to like cuss out the coach over here, like whatever. And then there's the kid who's like, I mean, I literally, for the middle school team I have, like a girl has had a panic attack multiple times on the court because she's so wound up and overwhelmed. I don't know where to be. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I feel like there are two very big extremes now versus when maybe we played. Because I can't remember on my team a ton of people, but maybe I just don't even know what it looks like. That's why I asked you, did people around you notice?
Sure.
I know teammates were scared they were going to get yanked out because they weren't getting a lot of playing time. And to me, that was normal. It was like growing up, that was just it. Like, yeah, you were going to have the kid who was like, dang, like I make one mistake and coach yanks me. Like that's always the conversation. But I just wonder what it looks like from the outside to like know. Again, it's very easy. If someone's having a panic attack, I know exactly what that looks like.
Yeah.
But short of that, like what does it look like to be terrified internally, like that something is, you know, about to happen or the coach is going to lose it or whatever.
I mean, I don't think we perform, like no one performs well in anything when your confidence is really low and the skill level of the expectation of whatever you're doing is really high, right? Like I think we perform best when we're like in the middle of that spectrum in some way, and like that's what it's so interesting to hear you talk, Sid, because I mean I'm older than you and you've always, I mean you were very good at a young age, and it's weird to me that like in college, you know, it finally like caught up to you, I guess, with your confidence level or your anxiety. I don't know, like in high school, you were probably so much better than everyone. Like, I mean, realistically, like your coach was not taking you out for anything in high school. And in college, you finally were around girls similar to your caliber, probably, like at Virginia. But it's interesting for me to think that you would have like so much, you know, internal anxiety with college.
Yeah. I mean, Keys, you brought up the fact that like you don't know what it looks like. And I feel like that's because like people who have this issue don't show it until they're at a breaking point. Like I reached my breaking point at UVA multiple times. And I think my anxiety wasn't so much like, it was being pulled out at some points because I don't know, my coach didn't have confidence in me at different points in my career. And so it was just like, let me just stay on the court. And when you have that mindset, you're literally just turning screening, like literally so robotic. Like I remember one time, oh man, I think I was a junior. We were in the conference tournament. We were playing Duke. And at this point in time, like my season is just a mess. Like I'm not really playing. I think it was like my sophomore year or my junior year. And I get in the second half, and this is my first time getting in the game. So this has been like, the year has really just killed me. Like I'm not a second half kind of player. And so I get in and I'm like, oh, she called my number. All right, let me go get in. And I remember like, I was like, please don't mess up. And then like the first play of the game I mess up, or like the first play I get in, and she didn't take me out, and I was like, whew. I was like, oh, I can play. And then like literally a minute later I come out, I'm like, oh, well, it's been fun. But like, just like that thought process, I think, but that was like later on when my confidence was already gone. I think what kind of led to this was just wanting so badly to strive for perfection. I think I had this huge perfectionist problem, and I still probably have it. Probably have it a little there. But like, just trying so hard to look like you have it together, to be like this perfect person. I think it's really important for people who are playing, or just people in general, to ask the question like, well, what would perfect even look like? I think when girls say, because I was a recruit that was like, oh, I want to be the best. Like, I'm like, oh, I just want to be the best. And coaches love to hear it. Everyone loves to hear it. But then when you like sit down and think about it, you're like, well, like, what is the best, and how do you know you've ever gotten there? Like, these are not tangible things that you can grasp. And so I caution kids, like, when they say they want to be the best, I'm like, so like, what does that actually look like? We talk about SMART goals, and I think sometimes it's corny. Like, I'm like, okay, SMART, like, super cute, like, but there's like some like, there's some truth to it. Sure. Like, let's make it tangible. Like, let's make it like attainable. Let's put some parameters on it, so you know that you're actually working towards it. Because I think I would have been a lot happier with my career if I knew, like, oh, I'm actually getting better day over day, than like some grand, like, oh, I want to be the best. And so I think year over year, seeing improvement, and knowing the player that I was, like, I was someone who I was always looking to other people for validation. So I stayed the summer going into my sophomore year, to like the whole summer, to train, and got so much better. But unless my coach was like, hey, Sid, you got better, I was like, oh, I must not have gotten better. Knowing good and well, like, I know the work I put in. I know I was in the gym every day. Like, so just trusting your work. But it's like, that was just not something that was natural to me. Like, I needed people to tell me I was doing well. And sometimes you just don't have that in college.
Yeah. And you need, like, to actually do well. You know, like, that's the thing. Like, you say trust in your work. I mean, I was a shooter, and so if I wasn't shooting well, that was a big part. You know, I counted it off as a bad game. Whereas, like, shooters get confident in practice, or when they're shooting by themselves, you know. And I learned that in college, like, who is giving me my confidence? And I mean, that's still something that we all struggle with probably, but in specifically to basketball, I remember feeling the best when I know I had shot a lot extra that week, and I was like, oh, I've been hitting all my shots this week. I know the game's going to be great. You know, you're like pumping yourself up, but you've also done the work for it to gain the confidence. Then the time comes when you have the game and you don't do well, then it's like, you know, what am I doing? That whole battle. And that certainly happened to me often, because I just placed so much of my identity in, you know, being able to hit shots. And that's, I knew that was my role on my team, and I knew that's what everyone else expected. And so, I mean, there were definitely times when my confidence would waver in that aspect, but you just hear sides of everything, like shooters need to shoot, like, you know, you miss your first shot, don't, you know, but then it's like, you go in the game as a freshman and they put you in for someone and you miss your first shot, and then they take you out, you know, or, you know, I'm sure I did something bad on the defensive end also, but I just think, like, confidence for me it was very much of me trying to make myself believe too, that, like, I'm, you know, good enough to be on this floor, and once I believed it, I could shoot from anywhere and make the shot, you know, and that's something that took me a long time to learn, that, like, someone else can't really take that away from me.
Right. Yeah. I think a part of it for me is also, like, for me, I was highly recruited, and then you get there and you're like, do I deserve to be here? That was like kind of a thought process. Yes, absolutely. Like, huge. And so believing that they recruited you, and you were recruited for a reason, like, they needed you to fill this spot, that you deserved to be there, that was so hard for me to just, like, kind of believe it. Half the time I was like, I felt like I was going to be found out, which is a huge part of imposter syndrome. Like, oh, I'm not actually supposed to be here, I'm not good enough. And then wanting to live up to my coach's expectations. Of course. But in doing that and putting all that pressure, so it's like, I'm walking in, like, I'm like, hi, coach, how you doing? I'm fine. And then, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to be in film because I want her to see I'm in film. I'm going to be in the gym because I want her to, but it's also like, I need to be in there because I'm trusting my work. Like, it's a kind of like a double-edged sword of kind of getting your mind right. And that's why I think a lot of kids just need to maybe tap into counseling earlier and figure out the mental side of the game because it's so big. Like your body will do whatever it needs to do to get the job done. It's just the mental side of it that killed my career. And I think part of it was wanting to reach my coach's expectations for me, but also like just having these expectations for myself. And then other people, like people talk. We talked about how like you want to go to a school because people know it. You want to perform well because people like know that you're possible, like it's capable, you know? So I just think there's a lot to balance in that, you know?
I think a big thing is, and I heard it somewhere the other day, mastering your failure recovery as well. Like,
yeah, that's good.
I don't think a lot of coaches teach you that. They're just like, pick yourself up, like you're fine, like everything's, you know, going well, it's gonna be all right. But like having some sense of a routine where, okay, when the things don't go the way that you want it to go, what is your recovery for that thing, right? Like, okay, I miss a shot. Do I, you know, I have a look I give to my teammate. I tap my shoulder and I know that I'm good. Like just something like tangible where you're managing. Again, I know like anxiety is a totally different thing, but I think if you're able to get yourself to like go into a routine immediately, I think it over time will help you perform. You're not always going to perform better, but at least you're not stewing in like, dang, that shot,
No, I think
coach is about to take me out.
It's like a reset button.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Need a reset because I think when we don't reset, when you're in a game or in whatever in life, and you know it keeps going negative, and you're never back to the level playing field that you started on. Like the best point of a game is the national anthem. You're like envisioning how good this game is gonna go. Right? Yeah, that's what I did. I was like, that was the best part of every game. You know, it's calm and you're ready to play. You know everything, and that's your reset. But then everything that happens after the first whistle, I feel like you're just trying to climb back up from whatever happened. And so I think a reset is awesome. We did have a sports psychologist at App that we worked with a little bit, and she shared different tactics and techniques. But like for one thing that I've heard a lot is like people wear a wristband or something. If you have a negative thought or if you do something bad, you need to get that out of your head to like snap your own wrist, to set yourself back, just like stuff like that. But I just think it's so hard for us to get ourselves out of our own heads, especially in a game like basketball. It's fast paced.
It's good.
Yeah. And it just compiles.
Is there a timeout? Is there a timeout anywhere?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I'm like, coach, this one for me. This for me though. Like, please take.
I was terrified of timeouts. Because
Really?
that usually just meant someone was gonna get. We had like the rage timeouts.
Okay.
That was I didn't.
Well, and some of this, honestly, I mean, to that point, is on the coaches. Like, coaches are feeding a culture that would. I mean, this generation is already more anxious than previous, right? Like, given all these new factors, social media, all of that. But coaches have an obligation as well to not create environments where a kid is terrified to show up or terrified to come to your timeout. Like, that's important too.
Yeah, I think that's huge just in terms of like, not even just like games, but like practice too.
Yeah.
Like knowing what you're getting into. I know when I transferred to Kansas, one thing I loved about that coach Brandon, amazing because you knew what you were getting with him. He was a straight shooter. So I remember we were on the free throw line, the opponent was shooting a free throw. If they got the offensive rebound, like in his mind, this is absolutely, I mean, you have the advantage. Like, he's like, there's no need for that.
No excuses.
So we knew what we were going to get into at practice. Like we had, I think it was like 5 and 65. So it's up and down. Like, so basically 10 full lengths of the court. Yeah. And that was our punishment run. And I remember one game, like we had, this happened 3 times. And so next practice, we're all like, I mean, we won the game, but we're all like, we lost because we're going to practice. Like, we have to do 3 of these and it sucks. It's terrible. But I think like with him, it was the thought process, like the way that he delivered it was like, this is not, I'm not punishing you guys directly. You guys know the deal. Right. And I think at Virginia, there was a lot of like, oh, like we're just gonna run you extra. Everything was you're gonna run for everything. You looked at someone wrong, you're running. You're late, you're running, which is natural. You're late, you're running. But like it was just everything. Like I remember we came back from a game, we lost to Boston College, and I mean we got back at like 1 or something like that, and we just
you were in the gym.
we went to the film room for sure. We went to the gym, and it was just kind of like, I mean, I had class at 8.
Yep.
Like I was a freshman that year, and we just, and so I mean, it felt like punishment, and it felt like absurd punishment, and that fed my anxiety. Like I knew it was coming, and I knew it wasn't gonna be good. Right. But I think at Kansas he did a really good job of just being like, I understand life happens. These are my non-negotiables, and coaches being able to do that makes it so much easier.
Great, like setting the standard.
Yeah.
And then, it is hard though. I mean, it's even hard as a coach. Like I coach girls right now, and it's hard to think of things, quote unquote punishments that people don't like to do more than running. Like no one likes running. Right. Even the good runners don't like it.
Right.
But. Yeah, that's hard, and I definitely had more anxiety probably about going to practice after a bad game than going into a game.
Oh,
wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
I've felt that feeling multiple times, but my senior year, we were on a road trip and we played Furman, and then we played horrible, and then it was like a short bus ride to Wofford, and like, all he said, he like just stormed in the locker room and he just said, "Get ready for practice tomorrow," and then left. And
it's encouraging. Really encouraging.
I called my mom, and it was the first. This sounds so dramatic, and I don't mean it like fully, but I was like, "Mom, I'm afraid for my life." Like, because I mean, you hear, I'm not the type of player that like dives on the floor, and I'm not the type of player that like bullies, and I'm not like I'm small, like I break. So I just lived in fear because I was in an atmosphere where you're like pitted against each other and everybody's competitive and wants to play. So it was like, whenever you said that, I was like, oh my gosh. There were times where I was like, "Mom, I'm like actually afraid for my life, like right now. Like I'm gonna end up in the hospital if I like have to dive on the floor after these things, if I get like beat up."
I just remember
keel over and die from running. Like,
I mean, and you're a good runner, so that's.
It's my.
I was very concerned for myself.
We ran that practice like the next day. We played Wofford the next day, and we ran the equivalent of like 4 of our fitness tests, which was sideline to sideline 15 times in under a minute. We had to do it like 3 times, or 3 or 4 times. It was insane. And we lost the next day, I know.
You were a little tired.
A little exhausted.
Yeah, but go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I interrupted you, but it's, I think like, we're talking about game day, like anxiety. I remember my first off season, like my first postseason was tragic. Like I was anxious then. I think more so than anything else, because no one talks about, in my opinion, no one talks about postseason. I had never heard about postseason as a recruit. I'm just like, I mean, because even in high school, you don't have postseason. Like, you're on to the next sport. You barely even have preseason. So, like, what are we talking about? And I remember, we had a losing season that year, my freshman year. We got a chance to go home, which I was like, oh, we get a chance to go home. You don't really want to go home. But we got a chance to go home, saw the family, came back, and like the first workout, I remember I ended the workout crying. And my coach was like, my position coach was like, "Sid, gotta get this together." And I'm like, she's trying to kill us. She's trying to kill us. Like, did you see this workout? Like, never had done a workout like that. And after that, like, just so anxious. I remember, but I actually ended up rising to the occasion and having great workouts throughout that postseason. Mm-hmm. But just like the level of anxiety to get me to the point of good performance was crazy because I had just never seen it before. And I knew it was coming every single day. It had to show up. So it's just hard. It's hard.
Postseason's hard.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I don't recommend it, but you have to go.
Yeah, D2 life is a little different. I mean, basically, I think you can't do anything. Well, this may be for everybody. Right. Can't do anything until the end of the tournament, right? And then, but they're so focused. I think for us, it was like make sure you're doing what you need to do in that classroom. So it was a little bit. I mean, it's different than that. It's more of a balance. That's why I try to sell D2, to some kids, but. Yeah, so, but the double-edged sword there is like postseason anxiety of like, now you're just trying to get in the gym all the time, like getting up shots, ball is live, gotta grind, like you start that process over and I'm not a naturally anxious person. I'm just very much so like, whatever comes, and that gets me in trouble sometimes. But I think the biggest thing I've kind of taken away is like, what does it look like, and how are coaches, creating environments where kids, one, even if you can't avoid creating an environment that, like, some kids are just going to be anxious, but do they know how to find the person to go talk to? And I don't mean their teammate. I'm saying sports psychologist. There's someone that they trust enough to actually help them through that process. I think that was the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah. And I think for me, it is just like seeking out the help. I think sometimes there's a stigma around it. Some schools don't always do the best job of like making it, like you said, available, but like in a place where people aren't going to be stigmatized for it. But if the help is there, like, go seek it out, and seek it out before you have the problem. Like, it's easier to save the house before it's burning. So just seek out the help early. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit the bell notifications so that you don't miss a video that we put out. Keep in mind, RCA is a podcast, so you can check us out wherever you stream podcasts. Also, follow us on Instagram and on Facebook, and if you really love our content, you can become a patron. You give to us monthly, and we give you exclusive content. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.